Hey guys, Ryan Fowler with the Inner Game Group here with Inner Masculine Live. We have a great show for you today. We're going to show you excerpts of a live hypnosis session that, well, recorded, but it's an actual session that famous hypnotherapist Marissa Peer did. She uses the same techniques we use. I do things a little different than her, but the techniques and everyone here maybe has their own spin. But the overall techniques are more or less the same. Marissa, a lot of hypnotists, hypnotherapists are not that good. Some are extremely good. And the results you're going to see Marissa get is results we get all the time. We're going to break down what she's doing, the specific methods. We'll talk about the secret sauce Marissa Peer uses that maybe other hypnotists don't get, that leads her to have big success when many others don't. We do it too. But people don't understand how powerful these methods are. You know, I have at this point 19 testimonials on my website. I'm getting them all put into shorts. So there's like 13 that are made into shorts and just showing massive result after massive result after massive result. It's like, why, you know, you look at the, and again, we don't treat specific medical conditions or specific mental illness. Nonetheless, we get results that are far superior to that. We routinely get results far superior to that of your mainstream psychologists. And honestly, I know a lot of what the mainstream psychologists do is helpful, but because they don't use these techniques, their overall effectiveness is a fraction. It's a small fraction. It's a minor fraction of the results we routinely see. The results that Marissa Peer, who was voted the #1 therapist in the United Kingdom 3 years in a row. She's multimillionaire many times over, become very successful because she uses these methods. And if you know how to do this correctly, it's not rocket science. Yes, it does take skill to develop it. You know, it's both a science and an art, I guess you would say. But we want to show you that this stuff works. You're going to see a live session or an in-person session, should I say. We'll pick it apart. We'll show you the results after with this lady. So this is great. So before we get to that, everyone introduce yourself, starting with Tim, Jordan, and then Brent and Gary.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim with ClearThatTrauma.com. I am a mindset coach that helps you reprogram your core beliefs so that you can move forward with success.
All right, Jordan.
Hello, I'm a sunburned Jordan today. I have JordanKurtzHypnosis.com. I help you clear your limiting beliefs and and so you can unlock your full potential and live your very best life, as all the Instagram people will say. Live your best life. But yeah, so.
Cool. Brent.
Yeah, hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Brent, and I'm based in Dallas, Texas. I facilitate sorting out your inner game, as well as combining it with positive masculinity and discipline.
Okay, thanks, Brent and Gary. Last but not least.
Yeah, definitely not least. So I help people with social anxiety quit overthinking and feeling judged so they can stop missing out on important work and life opportunities.
All right, my man. So I just have to kind of share with you guys. I have another client who wants to become a hypnotherapist, and that makes, I think, 8 now. It's ridiculous. So
very nice.
Yeah. So Tim, longtime friend of mine, became hypnotherapist. We helped his wife out quite a bit. You can watch that testimonial. Everyone else, they changed their lives with hypnosis. I changed my life with these techniques. And I would say we do more than just hypnosis, but it's the #1 technique we use. You want to cover all things. We want to get our conscious mind aligned with our subconscious, everything firing on all cylinders. But it is the #1 most powerful technique that we use. And if you want, hypnosis is so effective because it deals with your subconscious mind. We work directly on your subconscious mind to make permanent changes very quickly, as opposed to psychologists who work indirectly on your subconscious mind, and they're way more ineffective because of that. If you want to understand how your subconscious mind works, you are in luck, because you see in the bottom left of my screen, innermasculine.com/free-ebook. It's a 30-page book, ebook. Go there, pop in your email. You get it sent to you, no charge whatsoever, no obligation. And there's actually a way at the end. If you go to the end, you can see how you can book a free 30-minute consult with me, no cost, no obligation. But yeah, I'm going to pitch a session to you. It is what it is. But I'm going to do 30 minutes to help you however I can in the meantime. And if you want to understand how your subconscious mind works, it's a 1-hour read. It's going to lay all the fundamentals out. Why do you self-sabotage? Why do you procrastinate? What's anxiety about? Why are you stuck? What is, people who are depressed, feeling not good enough, have trapped anger, and they're lashing out at other people, feeling unsafe. It lays it all out. How does our subconscious develop? What is a subconscious program? How does our subconscious mind influence us day to day? It's on the ebook, and after an hour, you're going to know more than 99% of the world out there, 99.9% of the world, on what the subconscious mind is and how it works. Everyone knows it's super important. All the psychologists know it's incredibly important. Your subconscious, it influences behavior far more than anything else, and no one knows what it is. Now you're going to know. Get the ebook. So I guess we'll just go ahead and dive right into this clip. Now it's about 14 minutes of content, but we're going to play it at 1.5 speed, pausing, commenting along the way. And thank you, Jordan Kurtz, for coming up with this clip. I get a lot of good show ideas from these guys that often have a different spin and different angle that I do. So I'm very grateful for that. And so Marissa Peer has been doing hypnosis, I'd say, over 30 years. She is a student of a very famous hypnotist, Gil Boyne, who is one of the pioneers. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
me either.
She studied directly under Gil Boyne. And so these techniques, she's using techniques that Gil Boyne was doing 30, 40, 50 years ago. This stuff has been around, but I guess there's no profit in fixing someone quickly.
Yes,
so
that's right.
They have this, there's a really good Netflix show. It's called How to Change Your Mind. And it shows that they're, psychedelics, which if I had to choose between hypnosis and psychedelics, I'd choose hypnosis. But there are going to be people who do better with psychedelics. Hypnosis, you're not just taking a drug and having a trip. We're actually targeting stuff surgically, and we can have the flexibility to get bad stuff out and then put good beliefs in. So I think overall it's a better tool. Doing hypnosis with or guided sessions with certain psychedelics, that can be very powerful. Some psychedelics are now legal and approved for medical use. Ketamine's the number one. They're trying to get EMDR, ecstasy approved, because EMDR literally has, my understanding, again, not medical advice, has very little, if any, side effects. It just resolves trauma. And many people have resolved a massive amount of internal psychological trauma, childhood trauma with psychedelics. Well, what did they do? Back in the 1950s, they had all these scientific research showing, oh my goodness, psychedelics are so amazing. They're helping so many people. And then they got banned worldwide. What the hell? What the hell? And then there's this big stigma put on hypnosis. So because I don't think you can outlaw one person talking to another, right? So they just, there's this big campaign to make it seem like it's woo-woo and crappy and all this stuff. But in reality, we have these far superior methodologies. They were around 50 years ago. A lot of people don't do them correctly, but the people who do it at a high level get massive results. We do it. We see it all the freaking time. We see it all the time. And instead, these other less effective methodologies that make these companies more money are put in. And it's just absolute bullshit. So we're going to show you an example of this actually working today. Do any of you guys have comments about anything before we get started with the clip?
There's a lot of money in this stuff if you can drag people along for a very long time.
Yeah, if you get them a little bit better and drip feed them just a little bit of benefit over a long period of time, they'll pay big money over a long period of time. Yep.
There is I don't think there's a large belief in helping somebody directly and then following up. Usually it's if you go see a hypnosis that's just in town, wherever you're at, it generally is, 5 sessions for $600, or, they want you to come back, and they become more of a talking therapist, like counseling and family therapy and stuff, than directly targeting the issue and clearing it up. Now, that said, I'm not poo-pooing any other sessions of therapy, family counseling, marriage counseling, all that kind of stuff, but those will be a lot more successful once both parties involved have cleared their trauma.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying at all psychology doesn't have benefits. It has some very big benefits, but when it comes to getting people better, 99% of the time they're not doing everything they can, and because of that, the success they have is a fraction of what it could be. And I'm a guy who used to have massive manic depression. I've done 100 conventional sessions, so I know, man. Anyways, anyone else?
Before we get rolling, hello to P-Dubs and Jay Lee.
P-Dubs and Jay Lee, loyal watchers, followers. Appreciate you guys. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share this. We're going to start. Let's see, and I got to look up my timestamps. Okay. Now, the first thing we're going to watch in this clip is Marissa Peer. You know, it might be a bit of a stage trick, but she's actually showing the client that hypnosis does work. And I've had these techniques used on me. You literally feel your hand moving up, the other one moving down, like you literally feel this force. And that's just because hypnosis can influence your mind that influences everything else. I mean, when I raise my arm, it's because my mind is sending signals through my nervous system to tell it to. It all starts with the mind. And so watch this. This is pretty interesting. This shows you right off the bat how powerful hypnosis is. So we'll go to the 3 minute, to this mark here. And she's going to use hypnosis, and you'll see what happens. It's pretty interesting.
Much better ones, and make them real. So I want you to just stretch your arms out like so. Lock your elbows, close your hands. And I want you to imagine in your left hand, Megan, you're holding an enormous red fire bucket that's filled with about 50 pounds of heavy, wet sand. And straight away, you'll feel that your left arm is pulling down. Your left arm is becoming lower. You can feel the weight of that bucket pulling your left arm down as your left arm gets heavier and heavier and heavier. In this right arm, you're holding an enormous helium-filled balloon, which is absolutely weightless, lighter than air, so weightless that your right arm has no choice but to float up, lift up, pull up. And as your right arm is pulling up, your left arm is getting heavier and heavier, pulling down. The weight of that bucket is in your left wrist, in your shoulder, in your elbow, pulling your left arm down. But your right arm feels so weightless. It's floating up, moving up, traveling up, lifting up higher, higher, even higher still. And you're aware of something impressive. One arm is weightless, one arm is way down because of one thing, your ability to accept a suggestion and then make it real. And you're going to notice this even as I ask you, try to lift up your left arm and find it's incredibly, impossibly heavy. So heavy, the more you try to lift it, the more the weight of it pulls it back down again. And now try to push this right arm. And it's like trying to push a beach ball underwater. The more you try to lower your right arm, it springs up, pops up, and keeps traveling upwards. It refuses to go down. It insists on going up higher, higher, higher. And now let go of the bucket, let go of it, go deeper, deeper, deeper. That's perfect. You can see something that you should be very proud of. You are really good at making suggestions. Really, of course,
okay, yeah, and we are playing this at 1.5 speed because there's a lot of ground to cover. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Jordan.
I'll start. So I notice how her arms are kind of shaking. You know,
yeah.
I think that's a good, like, because you said earlier, oh, is this just a show trick, a party trick? Well, not really. I mean, she's accepting a suggestion that her arm is doing this, then she's responding accordingly. It's not magic or a trick. It pretty much is pretty as straightforward as it appears. I mean, she's literally imagining
you literally
how
feel
this
it.
would
You
feel.
literally
She's
feel
struggling under the weight or the lightness.
And
yeah.
You could, and so if you're watching this right now, you could go find this video, play it at normal speed, and follow, because this is an unedited video.
Yeah,
so
you
could actually do it on yourself,
Marissa,
and you could try it out. I think this is actually one of the examples that in hypnosis training, when we were all doing hypnosis training, this is one of the exercises that we did to kind of understand how suggestibility works. And you saw how her arm just flopped down immediately when she said, let go. Right.
Exactly. And yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it demonstrates how that she really is picturing and imagining and feeling that situation. And so when we talk about regression, going back to the cause of a painful trauma or memory, you're literally feeling, experiencing, reliving almost that same
Emotionally,
thing.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're visualizing it too, yeah. I have this. I'm sure it's been on my YouTube show before. There's this TED Talk. You can type it in, do a search on your own. It's called Super Mario Effect TED Talk. Watch the first 2 or 3 minutes of it. You'll see a guy where they did an experiment. 50,000 people took this experiment, didn't even know they were being experimented on. He had a website where he had a game where you use coding instructions to get a car to go through a maze successfully. And what he didn't tell people is there was 2 versions of the game. Half the people got a version where if they failed, then they would get a message that did not work, try again. The other half got a message that didn't work. You lost 5 points of your starting 200 points, try again. And just these simple negative 5 points that don't mean anything at all made the people who got penalized quit 2.5 times quicker than the group who did not get penalized. And in reality, the negative 5 points don't matter. It doesn't matter. No one's seen this. You're just on your computer doing it by yourself, but it had a big effect on your behavior. And what people don't realize is how much our brain can be influenced by outside stimulus, or especially when we alter the state to lower our brainwave frequency, we become even more open to outside stimulus where we can actually change subconscious programs that have kept us stuck for decades. Maybe change in 1 second, or you can feel your arm being lifted up or your arm being dragged down just by talking to you and having you imagine things. It's crazy, but that's how the brain works. And it's been established neuroscience, established psychology for decades.
And the key here, Ryan, is that the subconscious can't tell the difference between real and imaginary suggestions.
Yeah,
It's
especially in hypnosis.
Mhm.
When our conscious mind is fully activated, our conscious mind can act as a filter to say, okay, that's bull crap. I don't believe that. Okay, this I believe. Can act as a filter, but that filter drops when you go into hypnosis, and then it's just wide open. You can still reject things, but you can choose to reject things in hypnosis. But if you're willing to accept them in hypnosis, then your subconscious accepts the suggestions too, permanent changes. So anyone else before we go on? Okay, here we go. Now, this is going to be a portion of the actual session. She's going to start out with a technique called regression to cause, where you go back to a childhood memory and you actually get rid of the old belief, the old narrative, and put in a new one. So, and she's going to use another technique called Gestalt. I'm going to point them out while she's doing it. And here we go. It's about 10 minutes. Well, we're going 1.5 speed, so maybe 8 minutes, but this is solid gold. A live session right here.
You, but you couldn't even express it. You're going right back to a scene, all to do with all of those feelings right now. Just be there as I click my fingers. It's rather like you switch on a television set or your computer. The picture's warming up. You are right in the middle of that screen. This scene you're in now, Megan, is it daytime or nighttime?
Inside.
Are you inside or outside?
Inside.
On your own, or is anybody with you?
He's there.
He's there. How old are you about?
Can you pause it real quick?
14.
And I want you to describe exactly what it is you want.
Yep.
Look at her eyes.
Yeah, REM
Look at how her eyes are fluttering. It's not like this isn't an actor doing this. You can't.
No, it's a live session.
Yeah. Well, my point is, if the criticism is, if somebody was like, oh, this is fake, it's like you can't fake that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can't fake eye flutters.
Yeah. So just look at her, all the physical reactions that's going on. It's really good stuff. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Jordan.
You are doing, seeing, feeling as I count to 3 on the count of 1, 2, 3. Your ears are wide open. You can hear exactly what's being said. And remember, you're here with me. You're completely safe. You're simply reviewing a scene that caused you a lot of pain.
You see how her head tilted to the side there? That's her reliving the memory.
Look at her face. She's feeling some trauma right now.
She's in some anguish.
Yeah, she's back in the anguish she had as a 6-year-old kid that has been stuck in her all these years, messing up her life.
Tell me what's happened to that girl of 14.
He's telling me I'm stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You're stupid. You're stupid.
How does it feel?
And deep down, for all these years, she believed that deep down, because this gets in us as children, and these beliefs solidify, become subconscious beliefs that rule the rest of our life. Most people have their subconscious beliefs that form in childhood, stay with them unchanged their entire lives. But you can change them. This is how. So her whole life, she had this feeling deep down she's stupid, and that's been messing up her whole life. Now she's connecting to what's buried deep in her that's been messing her up. Here we go.
To be told you're stupid at just 14.
Feels true.
And why does it feel true?
Because he knows.
He knows. How does he know?
He knows everything.
All children at a young age idealize her parents. This is her dad. He knows everything. He's ideal. He's my God. You know, more or less, that's what kids think about their parents.
Yep.
Later on, you may not idealize your parents. Later on, you may hate your parents. But at a young, early age, he knows everything because we idealize our mom and dad as children. It's what we do.
If he knew everything, he might know not to tell his own daughter of 14 that she's stupid, don't you think? If he was that smart. Do you think a smart father who knows everything would know, but you don't say to a kid, your own kid, you're stupid over and over again? I don't think he knew everything. I don't think he knew how to raise you properly. Because a good, loving father, even in moments of annoyance, would not go, stupid, 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 over and over again. You see, that's the control he had on you, that you believed he was always right. And
so Marissa has located the traumatic belief in her that formed at this early memory. And Marissa is now challenging the belief. And then she's going to get rid of it and put a new one in. And these changes are permanent. These are permanent changes done in one session. We'll keep going.
One person is right, the other person has to be wrong.
What do you think about her kind of, do you think it's, and this is a genuine question, like for us to discuss, do you think it's better for Marissa to kind of walk her to that? I feel like she kind of hands her that analysis to either accept or reject. So what do you think about, because what I like to do is kind of walk my clients kind of to where they need to go so that I don't say something incorrectly. Now, the counter to that might be Marissa's worked with so many clients over 30 years, like you said, that she's seen enough patterns where she can safely lead.
She already knows where it's going because she's done it so much. Yeah, more or less.
I think there's also a little bit of helping her logically understand why her father was not correct. And I think that's pretty common no matter who you're dealing with. But you're right, Jordan. There always has to be that hesitation to lead somebody where they don't need to go or shouldn't go. But I think in this analysis here, she's simply pointing out the illogical expectation. A smart, all-knowing father would not tell their 6-year-old child, you're stupid, over and over. And she even makes a point, an occasion of an annoyance, maybe once, but not over and over and over. And so he wasn't so all-knowing. And I think that helps the subconscious let go of that trauma because it is false. I mean, we do a little different method when we talk about beliefs being false, but she's doing the same thing, maybe just a little bit different.
Yeah, my method is I actually do counter narratives like this, but I also work on the traumatic emotion directly as well and send that away. But let's talk about leading for our audience. Leading is where, and this has been shown in hypnosis. I think it's very rare, but it's been shown that you can actually maybe implant false memories in someone. So where you never lead is when you're having the person recall the memory. You never make any suggestions that would change their recollection of what happened. So I don't see Marissa doing that here, but when you are actually putting in a new narrative, then of course, you're leading with that, but you're not leading in a way that is planting false memories. You're rewriting the narrative. So
the counter to
what's going on.
The counter to what Marissa's doing is, could you lead the client? Because the client, the woman she's hypnotizing, she looks maybe early 20s or something. Do you think the client has enough logic and understanding of herself to be able to tell her father that wasn't okay herself? Like, is it necessary for Marissa to tell her that was wrong? Because I feel like, is it better if a client kind of, because she
has a client say stuff out loud later. You'll see.
Right, but I mean in this scenario, as opposed to asking the client, do you think this was okay, rather than telling her it wasn't, or like kind of walking her.
You can do either one. This is where the art comes in, and I've done both. I've done
both too, but I think it's good to
I can give the client the option, but she already asked the client, what did and the client said, this feels true. So that's when Marissa stepped in. So if a client can come to the conclusion on their own, great. And a lot of times with Gestalt, which we're going to point out later, the client does come to the correct conclusion. But that's where some of the art comes in, knowing when to intervene and when not to. So we'll keep going.
So stay in that scene. He tells you you're stupid and you believe him because he's made you feel over the years that he's right. And if he's right, that must mean you're wrong. Is that right? What else is going on in that scene?
He's towering over me. He's behind me. I feel like he's watching me all the time.
How does it feel to be watched all the time?
It just feels like I can't even breathe.
You can't even breathe. That's right. So I want you to imagine you're looking in this hand and you're holding just 2 scenes. It's okay. Just let that go now. Just let that go. It's a scene of many, many scenes. The story of your life being oppressed, being judged, being intimidated. We now call this coercive control. It's been made illegal for all the right reasons. I want you to imagine you're holding some snapshots in this hand. The one where you're 14 and your father is towering over you, can't even breathe as he tells you that you're stupid, 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 and you believe him. When in fact the person who's stupid here is not you, it's him, because that is a stupid thing to do, to tell a child, your own beautiful daughter, that she's stupid over and over again. And the other is a little girl who's hiding because she knows her dad is going to find her, hunt her, punish her for doing something, and she doesn't even know what she's done, but she disobeyed him.
Okay, so they actually go to two childhood scenes. The first one we skipped at age 6, where she was hiding from her dad, and her dad was mad, and she didn't even know what she did wrong. That's what they're talking about there. Now she's 14, and her dad is calling her stupid. Just so our audience understands.
So what do you? And I was going to say, what do you think about that? That her, because a lot of times in regression, is it absolutely necessary to go back to the source? Or is it more important that the client is able to just experience the thing they're trying to clear? So I thought we'd have a discussion on that. Because usually in regression, a lot of hypnotists try and go as far back as, that's kind of what we instruct to do, is we try and go back as far as possible. But what she does is she actually goes back to age 6, and then she said, I think she's 14 in this scenario. So what do you think about that, her doing that?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I have clients come to me, cannot remember their childhood, but they feel the trauma. They feel like the bad feelings in them, I'm not good enough, or anger or whatever. And when you, in those situations, when you focus on the feeling itself, I can still resolve the trauma most of the time. I'm not claiming 100%, but most of the time. So even if there isn't an early memory, you can still fix this. But going back to the early memory is an aid to connect to the trauma, to connect to it more strongly. And then if you know what the early memory was and what the interpretation is, it helps you to create the proper counter narrative, get the bad narrative out, which she's doing right now. And then she's going to put a good narrative in to replace it. For our audience, a subconscious program, the ones that mess us up, it is a belief formed in childhood based on how we interpreted events that happened, and it is tied to a feeling. As an adult, we go through the world, and anytime there's anything in the outside world that matches the belief that formed in our childhood, the feeling tied to that belief is triggered, and now you feel the feeling. Most of the emotions we feel are pretty much all actually, one directly or indirectly, are tied to these subconscious beliefs and the feelings attached to them. So there's actually 2 ways to fix your subconscious program. You can connect to the emotion and clear that and work directly on resolving the emotional trauma, or you can take it from the side of the narrative and take them back to the early memory, find out what the narrative was that formed at that early memory, and introduce a counter narrative. The most effective hypnotists do both. And that's what I do. Attack it from as many angles as you can. But if the only tool in your toolbox is to go back to the early memory and they can't remember it, even in hypnosis, some people, their childhood's blocked. Most people can, but some it's blocked. Well, if you understand what a subconscious program is, you say, okay, well, there's 2 sides to it. Let's attack it on purely the emotional side because they're feeling the trauma, and you can still get rid of it. But why not do it from both angles? And that's my approach. And I will say one thing that a lot of hypnotists, the mistake a lot of them make is they think the memory is a trauma. No, the memory is not the trauma. It's the belief and interpretation of what everything means in that memory and the feeling tied to it. That's the trauma. That's the bad narrative. And that's what you clear.
And that's how 2 children can experience the same event
thing
and
have
only
different
one of
traumas
them be
because they form
traumatized.
different beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if people are saying, "Oh, you didn't have a traumatic childhood. You had it." It's like, well, it's trauma is an interpretation by the
Exactly.
subconscious mind. And so I think that's really important. And so I think it's really important to not if I think when I'll just give a personal example. I was struggling, I think, to even accept that I had any trauma, years and years ago, because I was consciously justifying in my head, I had a good childhood. I
Yeah, you're a
had this, I had
valedictorian,
this.
right?
Yeah, I had
You
all
must be
these
doing good.
things. This can't be the reality. My childhood was fine, but it's not that, it's not that you experience like overtly traumatic events. It's your interpretation of those things. It's the beliefs that you form in your subconscious around those events that matter. And so,
Yeah, and what were the
yeah,
feelings you were struggling with that led you to do a session with me, Jordan?
largely this idea of external validation, this feeling of I'm not allowed to feel good about myself unless I have some external proof that I've accomplished something, that I'm leading in some organization, that I've done something to earn acceptance, approval, love, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
you knew
And
something
that,
was off, and that's all the proof you need that there's stuff in you that needs to be fixed. You had this thing in the back of your mind that's like something's off here. I shouldn't be needing external validation yet. You also felt very rigid, like there's certain things you couldn't do that you want to do. Am
that
I
I
right?
wasn't allowed to do, that I was a
Wasn't
bad
allowed.
person for even considering the
Yeah.
idea of doing them to begin with.
Yeah. Perfect. So for our audience, if you have feelings in you that you're stuck somehow, there's something in you that keeps you procrastinating, keeps you from doing what you want. You want to start a business, but you're just too terrified. You're being held back somehow, anxiety, whatever. You get someone says something and it hurts you really bad, more than you feel it should, just whatever. You have
And I
bad
also,
subconscious
yeah.
programs.
And
Even if
also
you
say,
maybe you had a pretty good childhood, but there's a few key things that happen and you interpret it a certain way, and now you're struggling. The struggle is all the evidence you need that there's stuff we can fix.
yeah, and it doesn't mean like your parents were bad people, or or your family around you. It doesn't mean that like they're bad people for the experiences or anything like that. It just means that the way you interpreted certain things caused a feeling, and there might not have been anything that anyone could have done about it, because it's kind of a summation of a bunch of stuff. And another thing I wanted to point out about the video: do you think it's a coincidence that she says store the trauma in the hands and here, and then the suggestibility test she did was also in her hands? Do you think that was intentional?
I'm not sure. I don't think she knew it was going to happen. I don't know. That's a good question though. Okay, we'll keep going because we do have about 20 minutes before we got to do a hard stop here because of appointments coming up. So here we go.
So those two scenes are enough for you to look at. And in this scene today is a picture of you today. Beautiful, clever, smart, gorgeous, kind. And yet, the beautiful, kind adult you is very ruled by these scenes. So if you had ticker tape running between your hands like they have in Times Square, and it's explaining how these scenes in your past have led to all the issues you're going through today, reacting to control, getting angry, will tell you what to do, feeling that you've got to be perfect and good all the time. I know how these scenes caused you today, but I want you to tell me. Tell me how those scenes, those two and others just like them, caused you to be the way you are today.
Feel unworthy. Feel inadequate. Feel I can't go after what I want to go after.
What's this called?
I'm not good enough.
Toxic shame.
Yep.
There's only 5 core traumas. You look at the psychologists have this massive volume called the DSM-5. It's a diagnostic statistical manual, I think. DSM. I might have slaughtered. I don't know. It's like 1,000 pages plus, listing all of these behaviors, both maladaptive and not. And all the maladaptive ones, guess what? There's only 5 traumas at the core. You may have one, you may have all 5, you may have 3 of them. They apply differently to different people, but we see these 5 over and over and over again. The number one that we see right here, toxic shame. You guys might be sick of how much I talk about toxic shame, but it solves a ridiculous amount of maladies, maladaptive behaviors. It's resolving toxic shame resolves a ridiculous amount of stuff, and people resolve it, and then they just take off in life. It's fantastic when we resolve it.
I want you to say,
What's
I
a
feel
ticker
unworthy,
tape?
inadequate.
What is a ticker tape? It's that stuff they throw out of the buildings and it all falls down. And, you know, back in the day, they had a ticker tape that would come off the stock reporting bubble. So they have these glass bubbles and their telegraph, and they punch out all these messages as they're receiving them from Wall Street. Well, they would take all those ticker tapes that were laying on the floor, cut them up, and throw them out in parades, use them as confetti.
I must be too young for that reference. I didn't know what she meant by
it's
that.
all electronic now.
All right, moving forward. Here we go.
Repeat after me. I feel unworthy.
Feel unworthy.
I feel inadequate.
Feel inadequate.
I can't go after what I want.
Can't go after what I want.
Because and finish that. Because
I just feel like I'm unworthy.
I want it because I was made to feel
I
unworthy.
was made to feel unworthy.
It happened so much.
It happened so much.
It's all I know.
It's all I know.
It's familiar to be made to feel unworthy.
It's familiar to be made unworthy.
And not familiar to feel worthy.
Enough.
She's having the client say it because when the client says it in hypnosis, they believe it even more than when you say it. But it's effective when you say it too.
Familiar to feel worthy.
So I want you to imagine going back to that scene, and I want you to just look at that little girl of 6, and I want you to go, that's not me.
It's not me.
Because if you went home today and your father hunted you down and said, I'm going to hit you, wouldn't you call the police or walk out of the house? So that's not really you, is it? And at the age when if your father said today, you're stupid, you might go, you know what, Dad? I think you might be stupid because that's a really stupid thing to do to your own smart kid. Isn't that right?
Here's the counter narrative. Got the bad narrative out, putting a new one in, challenging it and putting a new one in. This changes everything.
Right? You wanted to be a doctor, but he told you were stupid. He knew that wasn't true. He wouldn't have wanted you to be a doctor if he thought you were stupid. So it sounds like he was the stupid one. Isn't that right? I want you to imagine your father's right in front of you, and I want you to say, Dad, I need to ask you a question. Why did you try so much to control me and make me successful and then tell me I was stupid? Couldn't you see how counterproductive that was? So imagine he's there and say out loud, Dad, you tried to mold me and shape me.
You tried to mold me and shape me.
And make me a doctor.
And make me a doctor.
You're obsessed with how my life would be.
You're obsessed with how my life.
And then you.
She touched that part of the brain on purpose because that's the part of the brain. It's something cortex.
Prefrontal
cortex. She's activating that part because that's where the activity is going on here to stimulate that. So that's what she's doing there. Also, notice all the emotion on this lady's face. When you are feeling the traumatic emotions, you are connected to the bad program. That is the number one sign you're connected and that you can fix it. If they're feeling the trauma, you can fix it 99% of the time. So that's what we always look for in sessions. I ask people, how do you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? What does it feel like, to make sure they are connected, because you know they are in a spot where you can now do the healing.
That's the other thing she doesn't do is the body part. She doesn't ask. I mean, I think
that's Melanie Tonya Evans. That's not her. You can work on this from two sides. You can work on it from the emotion side or from the narrative side. She's doing the narrative side. I do both because why not hit it from both angles?
Yeah. And I think she's definitely connected to the feeling. I mean, I think the body really helps to as part of the connection, but I think,
and she's touching certain parts of the body, which actually in some jurisdictions that's allowed, some it's not. You got to be a little careful with that, but apparently where she's at, it's no problem. So she is working with her body too, but she's not focusing on the emotion. She's taking the other narrative angle, which is, it's fine. It's effective, but why not do both sides? That's how I take it.
So you were undoing all the work you were doing. And that makes me think that you're a bit stupid.
That makes me think that you're a bit stupid.
Why did you do that?
Why did you do that?
I thought you were so smart.
I thought you were so smart.
I thought you knew everything.
I thought you knew everything.
But looking at it now,
I
don't think you were very smart at all.
I don't think you were very smart.
Because you really made me live a regimented life.
Because you really made me live a regimented.
And it caused me so much pain.
It caused me so much pain.
And my mother too. And you could see what you were doing.
You could see what you were doing.
And you still did it.
You still did it.
And I'm now doubting how smart you really are.
I'm doubting how smart you really are.
Why did?
Now we're going to get into Gestalt, where she's going to have a conversation with her father and actually be the father and talk back. This is great.
Did you do that?
The only criticism I have is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I tend to not use language that's like above a certain grade level to try and keep it as basic. So using words like regimented, I don't know. I'm not. Yeah,
I
might be a little.
So like I have a thought on that. It's like it's really like what is meaningful to the person.
Yeah,
right?
and it sounds like this lady's a doctor or in med school or something like that. So it's no problem for this lady.
Sure.
Marissa, we got to give her credit. She's adopting, like the ticker tape. I'm betting this girl's from New York and knows what that means. And I guarantee you, Marissa, who's been doing this over 30 years, world famous, would not use those terms unless she knew the lady knew what those were.
Sure,
I guarantee
sure.
you that. I've studied a lot of Marissa's stuff. We can build on top of her pioneering work. We can build on top of Gil Boyne's pioneering work, but she is a master in her sphere.
Why did you?
Yeah.
Asking what made you behave like that?
What made you behave like this?
It's not loving.
It's not loving.
It's not kind,
It's not kind.
and it doesn't work.
It does not.
So why did you do it?
So why did you do it?
As I click my fingers, you can switch places, become the father, look out at your beautiful daughter and tell her the truth. Tell her the truth. What is it about your life that made you behave like that?
Because I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you're in hypnosis, your subconscious actually believes you're having a real conversation with this other person. We'll keep going.
And I want the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to have everything that I didn't.
Mm-hmm. I want you to go back and say, no, that's not love.
Not love.
Love is kind.
Love is kind.
Love is understanding.
Love is understanding.
And love is letting someone be who they want to be.
Love is letting someone be who they want to be.
I don't accept that answer.
Don't accept that.
I need a better one.
I need a better one.
What made you treat me like you owned me and could mold me and shape me as if I was a thing?
What made you own me and shape me like I was a thing?
What made you think that was okay?
What made you think that was okay?
Switch places, be the father, look again at your daughter and tell her the truth. Why did you act like she was your property? Just tell her the truth.
I own you.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
You're mine.
Mm-hmm. I want you to go on. I want you to be the father and say, I've always felt so inadequate my whole life.
I've always felt so inadequate my whole life.
I thought if I could make you perfect,
I can make you perfect.
I wouldn't be so inadequate.
I wouldn't be so inadequate.
And that's why I tried to make you perfect,
And that's why I tried to make you perfect.
even though I kind of knew it wasn't possible.
Even though I kind of knew it wasn't possible.
I needed you to be perfect,
I needed you to be perfect.
to hide all my
to
flaws,
hide all my faults.
and it didn't work.
And it didn't work.
Does that sound, Megan, true or false? Of course it's true. People who try to have perfect children always saying, well, I'm a bit rubbish, but I have a perfect kid, and then I can convince the whole world I'm perfect, but they can never convince themselves. And there is no perfect. In the race to be perfect, there's no finishing line, because your father is like all of us, flawed, having flawed relationships with flawed people, but he wanted you to be perfect. He said, enter that race, and you can never even reach the finishing line, and he kept you there for a long time. And I want you to say to him, I don't have to be perfect for you.
I don't have to be perfect.
She's talking about her dad's own toxic shame.
Yep.
Her dad's feeling of inadequacy led him to control the daughter and try and make the daughter perfect to compensate for his own inadequacy. Again, another case of toxic shame, messing up the dad and messing up the daughter. It's the number one thing we work on.
Is this what generational trauma means, Ryan?
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah. This is living through proxy, perfection through proxy.
And the other thing I noticed is like Marissa's kind of feeding this girl what to say. And so, and I usually only do that if the client is struggling to kind of resolve it. You know, you can ask sort of like,
Well, the client
generally
was
when I'm doing
struggling.
Gestalt,
Marissa picks up on it very quickly. The first thing the client said is, as a dad, I do it because I love you. So Marissa picks up on the signs very quickly. She's done this for 30 years. So that's why she switches much quicker.
So to Jordan's point, when we're doing Gestalt, sometimes the conversation between the two people comes to a bit of a sudden halt, because it'll be I don't know. And even if we try well, if you did know, what would you say? It still is halted. And a lot of clues, especially when we do dive to the 5 with people, will be laid out for us to understand that relationship a bit, resentment, rage, that type of stuff, that we can insert some ideas. And sometimes that, for me anyway, it gets the ball rolling. Like it opens them up. It gets their brain going. Because, when you're raising kids, you get that, why'd you do that? I don't know. Well, if you did know, why'd you do it? And you sort of have to, did you do it because, and so there's a lot of that going on here, because like Ryan said, she picked up her getting stuck. So she helped her along. And even then she said, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Because she could reject that if she wanted.
I think there is some value in having the client realize why their parent was doing it and say it out loud. That's usually my first thing I try and do. But if they can't do it, sometimes you got to lead them there. But If she realizes, oh, my dad was treating me bad because he was treated badly, and she makes that connection on her own, that's kind of what Marissa's after. So I think that's.
And to Gary's point, with generational trauma, you are who you are, and you're going to pass on the best that you know or the worst that you know. It's what you know.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly how generational trauma passes on. Exactly. So, one thing I would also say is, I think it's better to give a little more time for the client to work it out on their own. But I think Marissa's aware that she's trying to keep this a shorter session. So I think Marissa is maybe speeding it up a little more than she would otherwise.
Yeah, and we don't have context, like you were saying, Ryan, how much Marissa and this woman had a conversation with prior to the session.
Yeah.
So she might already have talked with this woman about a lot of these things. And like Marissa only knows, I would bet that Marissa knows how to kind of lead her a little bit here because they had a conversation prior and this woman told Marissa a lot of stuff about her father, about that relationship. And so I kind of doubt she's going in completely blind.
Correct.
Well, and also I think Marissa is trying to speed it along, quite honestly.
And 30 years experience, there's not a million different behaviors from parents towards children.
Yeah, we see this over and over and over and over and over again.
It's almost too easy sometimes to know what that conversation was.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and move on. We got
8 minutes.
We got 6 minutes to play about 4 minutes of content and comments. So here we go.
You were perfect.
You were perfect.
I had to live up to your expectations.
Live up to your expectations.
But I can see now that you're deeply flawed.
But I can now see that you're deeply flawed.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
I'm free now.
I'm free.
Your flaws are setting me free.
Are setting me free.
I don't need to live up to any expectations.
I don't need to live up to any expectations.
Don't need to live up to yours.
I don't need to live up to yours.
It's not my job to make your life better.
It's not my job to make your life better.
It's not my job to make you look better.
It's not my job to make you look better.
My job is to live my life on my terms.
My job is to live my life on my terms.
And when I was a kid, I didn't have a voice.
When I was a kid, I didn't have a voice.
But I have one now.
But I have one now.
And I can tell you anything I like.
Tell you anything I like.
I can tell you that you're wrong.
I can tell you that you're wrong.
You're not as smart as you think you are.
You're not as smart as you think you are.
And you don't own me.
And you do not own me.
And I owe you nothing at all.
I owe you nothing at all.
What else would you like to say to him? Now that you can see the truth, now that the scales are falling away from your eyes and you can see the truth, an inadequate man thought, well, I'll make my daughter perfect and then it will hide my flaws. And that was a heavy price he put on you, but you're free now. You're free enough to go, yeah, I can look at that. It was sad. I can look at it even with fascination and see, wow, I thought he was so smart, but perhaps not. So when you look over and around, look over and around and through the truth. Look over it, look around it, look right through it. And realize that you never disappointed your father ever. He was deeply disappointed.
The reframing part.
And critical people have the most criticism reserved.
Listen to this. When you come across people, by the way, I think about half the red pill gurus and coaches. I think half red pill gurus and coaches are the real deal. I think half are like this person, the dad right here, because I have had, I won't say who, but there are certain very, very, very well-known red pill gurus, coaches who are very critical of others. And then I gave them a little criticism and we had a behind the scenes conversation and the person took that little bit of criticism extremely poorly. And their mask came off. If you are around anyone who's very critical, it is a dead ringer that they are very critical on themselves and have massive insecurity. Just trust me on this. I've seen it so many times.
Themselves, and they simply reflect out to the whole world their dissatisfaction with themselves by criticizing everyone else, including their own children. So your father, all that criticism he gave to you was about him.
And there's a lot of flack against the red pill. And honestly, it's because half these coaches are like this and they deserve it. I'm not criticizing the red pill, but there are flawed people that got to the top of it and they are like this dad and they're being exposed in different ways. And there's some truth to the exposure.
They're using their own toxic shame to shame others, and they don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're being helpful.
They don't even understand how their own subconscious works, and they are being exposed. And honestly, they kind of deserve it because you know what? I don't care. I don't care if you have toxic shame. If you're criticizing everyone around you, fair is fair. you're open to being criticized too. I do not give a shit if that hurts you, because you're hurting others, and you got to learn your lesson one way or another. So the people who are getting exposed, you know what? Well, you shouldn't be a hypocrite. I'm sorry. That's, go inward and fix that stuff. Do a session. I'll do a session for any of these guys. They got to pay my normal rate, but fix yourself, or just shut up and stop criticizing others. Don't be a hypocrite.
Being dissatisfied with his life. Is that true or false? It's true. And now that you know that, what difference does that make for you today, knowing what you know?
I am worthy.
Yeah.
I am capable.
Yeah.
I can breathe on my own.
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm free.
So I want you to go back to the little girl of 6 who's hiding. I want you to say with some power in your voice, that's not me.
It's not
Doing
me.
the
I don't
inner
need to
child
run.
I
piece
don't need to
here.
run.
I don't need to
I
hide.
don't need to hide.
I have a voice.
I have a voice.
And I can tell my father to back off.
I can tell my father to back off.
To go away.
To go away.
I can say anything I like to him.
Say anything I like to him.
Because he will never put his hands on me again.
Because he will never put his hands on me again.
Okay. And we'll go to the end here. You see the 3 parts. She went back to childhood memory, challenged the old narrative, got rid of it, introduced a new narrative, which she's finishing up now. They then have her do inner child work, which we don't have time to, but the formula is to locate the trauma, get the bad trauma out, and put new awesome programs in, and it changes everything. So we're going to go to the end here and just kind of see a very brief post-session interview and see what happens, and listen to how this girl feels and what she's talking about, what's going on with her body. It's very interesting. Everything she says is a sign of massive permanent shift. Here we go. And she did have a massive permanent shift.
Come back to your full awareness. Just open your eyes. Just come back into the room. And just take a deep breath. How do you feel?
Lighter.
It's good to be lighter.
Lighter or tired or everything else she said is a sign of permanent change.
It's very different.
It's strange to remember that, but it's not.
Do you want to go to 50 therapy sessions or just knock it out in one this way?
Remembering. It's remembering what it
Think about that.
did to you. But when you remember what it did to you, you think, well, now you can choose to never let it affect you like that ever again.
Yeah.
And does it make sense when you realize that your father's imperfections made him try to make you perfect, even though that's an impossible thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't quite as smart as you thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's probably why he had an affair too, because people are imperfect, always looking for someone to worship them. How do you feel now?
I feel a little dizzy.
Yeah, it's very
Dizzy, lighter.
normal as you let go of stuff to feel a bit dizzy.
Big weight lifted.
I want to throw up.
Sorry?
She wants to throw up. I had a client actually start dry heaving in a session.
Yep.
But dude, that session so phenomenally changed that guy's life. It was night and day, man. Massive, massive, massive. Your body, your mind, it's all connected. It is all connected. That's why she's feeling like this.
I feel like I want to throw up.
It's a similar thing with the plant medicine stuff, right? Because like when people do like ayahuasca and like
Oh, they'll
really
get nauseous. Yeah.
like they get nausea, they vomit, they crap, like there's like a huge release that causes that.
Partially because of the drug itself, but
Well, of course,
partially because of where the drug takes them psychologically,
of course,
and into their subconscious. Yeah.
That's a huge letting go. Sometimes after hypnotherapy, you can feel like you need to peel off.
Huge letting go.
Sometimes you get discharge from your eyes and nose, and sometimes you feel like you want to physically throw up, but it's just a massive letting go. And that massive letting go is a sign of how well you've done, because you're bringing all that stuff up and you don't need to keep it anymore.
Feel empty at the same time.
That's a big one. Empty, lighter, tired. I get tired a lot. People just let shit go and they're just tired. They want to take a nap.
You know, if the body stores the trauma, like Bessel van der Kolk puts out in his book, the body stores
number one seller for 8 years in psychology. The body
that is going to indicate that you've taken something out of your body, and that is traumatic. It has to readjust.
Yeah, trauma is stored in your body. Psychological trauma is stored in your body. So I actually have a few more minutes, but Gary, it's 4 minutes till noon Central or Mountain Time. 4 minutes.
Great show, guys.
So
thank you, Gary.
Yeah, well, I can't stay too much longer, but thanks for coming on, Gary. And we'll keep going. Gary, the man. Great guy. Keep going.
It took up so much space. Of course you feel empty, because your whole space has been filled with that need to be perfect to please someone else when it actually never pleased you. And now you're free. Sometimes freedom feels a bit strange when you've never had it. It's very nice.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to do it. You poor thing. Imagine being controlled. But now you understand that your dad just felt flawed.
Yeah,
You
I
need
can
to
see
be
why
perfect.
it's like much
Yeah.
cooler.
Check out my next video.
Isn't that interesting? Look at this one, growing up with a narcissist. Yep. Okay, I can identify with that. All right, so that's pretty much it. What do you guys think?
Takes
I
a lot
got
of energy
one
for-
comment before we head out of here.
Go for it.
This is a educated, good-looking lady, held well, dresses nicely. This is someone you wouldn't see walking down the sidewalk and go, there's a pile of trauma right there. But
Yeah.
she knew it. It doesn't matter how you look on the outside, what you drive, what you wear, what you eat, doesn't matter. What matters is that internal programming, and you could tell it made a huge difference in her.
The vast majority of people have some trauma that holds them back. It doesn't mean you're an alcoholic passed out in a gutter, but it could mean you're living far below your potential because
Absolutely.
of what's in you.
Yep.
And you remove people's trauma and they just take off. I've had over a dozen people come back to me and they're like 6 months later, a year later, they're like, I doubled my income. It's up 30%. It's tripled. It's up 10 times. And, guys who like could never approach a girl, like literally never before in their life. And this is audio interview on my show a week ago. The one about the salesman, he went from bottom 1% of 200. He was bottom or second from bottom out of 200 salespeople. One session, 5 months later, and he had never approached a girl. 5 months later, 3 girlfriends, number 7 out of 200. Now living on his own, no longer living with his parents. Massive
And this
change.
stuff is hard.
One session. One session. You release that trauma, that's what it does. You
And
take
this stuff
off.
is, and like you understand, like this stuff isn't easy. It's like I don't mean from the
Oh, that
hypnotist
girl faced
perspective.
her
I mean,
demons. You saw her
yeah,
crying and
it's
trembling.
probably one of the hardest things you might do is to actually willingly go back and look at the stuff that you've been trying not to look at for a long time.
Yeah, it
But if
depends
you
on
can
the
get-
person. Some it's hard, some it's not, but it's always intense. But
I don't mean
the
hard
return
as in
on
like
investment is
I
massive.
can't do it. I mean it can be hard to choose to relive shitty feelings.
Yeah, for some
Tremendously
people, yeah.
courageous.
Yeah,
100%.
but if you can, but I think like where I'm at right now is I flip the script. I'm looking for those type of anxieties because you can clear them. So
Yep.
you
You
start
got
to
the power.
right, and once you have that really good tool, you're no longer afraid. You have the courage to be able to look at that hard stuff and
Yeah.
remove it forever.
And and in the long run, it hurts 1,000 times more to keep this stuff in you, messing
Yes,
you up
it
the
does.
rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's 1,000
It literally
times
is a backpack full of rocks that you have to carry until you unload those rocks and lighten your load. And thank you, Musically Superior. Appreciate your comment.
Brent, you have any comments?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking I could really sympathize with this, young lady with having a perfectionist as a father. My father was the exact same way, and it does a lot of damage to you growing up as a kid. I could remember growing up and everything we did together, working together on a house, or maybe I'd be in school, I'd always second guess myself. Is this the right move? Is this good enough? And I constantly did that literally until, you and me did the hypno session a couple years ago. And because he was a perfectionist, obviously trying to compensate for traumas in his own past. He had a hard upbringing, which I understand. But unfortunately, he passed it on to me. And then obviously you and me did the work, Ryan. And now, all I can do is the best possible job I can. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
Do the best I can. I'm not going to strive for perfection because I'm not perfect. I'm good enough, and I will do the best job I possibly can. And that's what I strive for.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Brent. And Brent is a walking testimonial. Brent went before the first session with me. You had a lot of anger in you. You couldn't hold down a job. Extremely little success with women. Could not get past your test to get your mechanic certification. Now, 3 years later, 3 sessions. You got a very nice girl, cute, but also a very nice, sweet girl, making 6 figures, just bought your first real estate property, and a year and a half ago, you got all your 8 certifications that you couldn't get for 6 years of trying, couldn't get a single one. We cleared that stuff. Year and a half, you got all 8. Your life is totally different because we fixed your subconscious.
Talk
You're a
about
walking
change.
testimonial. This works. I am too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I've been MA, guys. I'm
Yeah,
closing on my
Gary.
first property next week, so very excited about that.
Very exciting.
Very cool.
Nice.
All right, this is life changing. That's exactly what this is. So I'm musically superior. Thank you for the kind words, Jay Lee. Thank you, P Dubs as well. P Dubs every video he like comments red pill up and gives me a like. So I appreciate you guys all. And I'm not sure, Gil. People book sessions under different names. I don't know if that's with me or Tim, but whoever you have a session with, we're looking forward to it too. And do you guys have anything else any one of you want to add before we wrap up here?
I think it just gets addicting, this kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, I think I've heard people call it, Gil Boyne called it the hypnosis fever. It's like, once you figure it out, you're like, God, I got to use it now. I feel like all the people on this panel, you know, we really want to use our skills. It's like, man, I just want to pull traumas out of people. It's like, once you learn it, you're like, I gotta get this stuff out to people. You feel almost like an obligation. I know
That's
Ryan
why I got a show.
quit his job. Ryan quit his
quit
job.
my $190,000 a year job to do this full time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, guys?
No.
Okay. This is all in all we're doing is we're showing you guys how to go in and fix yourself. That's what Marissa was doing, holding up the signs. The lady she did a session for was doing all the heavy lifting. Marissa was just showing her what to do. At the end of the day, you can go in and fix. I have people fix themselves with self-hypnosis. They listen to an audio and they fix themselves. You're really doing the work to fix yourselves. We're giving you the knowledge and guiding you, but the power lies with you. You, our audience, you are the ones who have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you.